Smith didn't beat Clark to the Bullfrog district, but the rivalry was far from over. He knew that someday he would again compete with Clark. Now, however, he turned his sights to the new adversary, the Amargosa Canyon. The work through the canyon would require the full force of Smith's men. John Ryan wanted to get the job done with no distractions. He asked the Inyo County Board of Supervisors to restrict the sale of liquor. A saloon on the desert, wrote Ryan, is nothing more or less than a rendezvous for low-grade characters. The railroad wanted to hire all whites, but few would work in such torrid conditions. When Japanese laborers arrived, they offered a solution to the hot weather problem. Half the crew took large gulps of water and spit a spray over the other half as they worked. Teams of Mexicans labored for 15 days and then went back to Los Angeles for 15 days off. Thankfully, the intense heat lasted only until October. Then men were brought in to do a full day's work. Working through the canyon required slicing through hillsides, making what are commonly called cuts.
The cuts had to be made the hard way, using drill bits and mostly hammers. You have one person holding the bit and turning it and somebody else hitting the end of it. And doing this endlessly, day after day after day after day. And then when they get a hole that's 3 or 4 feet deep, then they load it with dynamite and put a fuse to it and blow it out. That's how you do mining the same way. And one man and working alone can usually do about 120 inches in hard rock each day. I've done enough of that myself to know, and it's really hard labor.
They made $2 a day, and the work was sun up to sundown, and the men slept and ate in tent camps that moved as the line advanced. Water cars brought in fresh water, and meat was shipped in several times a week. The quality of the food and the chef was critical to keeping the men. Cahill once wrote, "This man is an apology for a cook. The men are complaining. Send us out a good man." John Ryan reported that men were hard to keep for other reasons. They would often get bit with gold or copper fever, and off they went to the newest boom camp. As work continued into the canyon, John Ryan wrote a series of letters to Francis Smith. October 13,
1906. Everything is being done to push the work as rapidly as possible. November 15, 1906. The heavy rock work in the canyon will retard our track laying for quite a little while. November 22nd, 1906. An average of 3,500 cubic feet of earth had been moved per day. 7 work camps are spread over the canyon. It is being snowing heavily here all day. This is something unusual, and there is now about 4 inches on the ground and still snowing. December 16th, 1906. We could not ask for better weather than we are having at the present time. December 31st, 1906. The weather has been very stormy out in this direction. The rain came down in torrents. January 31st, 1907. We expect to be out of the canyon in 6 weeks. February 27th, 1907. We now hope to be through the heavy work in the canyon in about 6 weeks. March 2nd, 1907. We are about through with the work in the Amargosa Canyon.
In fact, they wouldn't be through until May. It took 1,000 head of mules and horses and 1,100 men over 10 months to lay less than 10 miles of track. Less than a mile a month at a cost of $55,000 per mile. Finally, in May 1907, the Tonopah and Tidewater emerged from the Amargosa Canyon. 600 tons of lead from the Tonopah Consolidated Mining Company was waiting at the new stop, also called Tonopah. It meant Wildcat and was named for the Paiute chief who led his people for more than 50 years. Now, 2 years after his death, the Paiute village, which had once been one of the largest Native American settlements in the region, was a company town for the Tonopah mines. Francis Smith was facing crises both personally and professionally. A year earlier, his wife had died. Then the San Francisco earthquake and fire devastated the company offices, forcing a move to Oakland. Now his refineries were running out of borax. The mine at Borate was nearly depleted, and the Tonopah and Tidewater was still 28 miles from the new mine. If the railroad wasn't coming to the borax, somehow the borax had to come to the railroad. Smith knew one way to get the job done: mule team. He had a team of 20 mules hitched to the old borax wagons. For 2 months, the teams hauled borax from the Lila Sea to the approaching railroad. It was the last time borax was hauled by mules. In August 1907, nearly 2 years to the date that Smith started building his line, the Tonopah and Tidewater finally pulled into the stop called Death Valley Junction.